What is up, everybody? My name is BobaTalks, and welcome to my Arrow mid-season finale review analysis for episode 9. And I'm sorry this is a little bit late. Obviously, I cover Gotham, so when Arrow's on the same day as that, it makes it a bit of a nightmare for me. And then Gotham had to pump out an awesome trailer, so I had to cover that yesterday. So this is late. I think I'm going to get the trailer breakdown for the next episode tomorrow, hopefully. But for the time being, here I am finally, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this episode. But before I break down this video, guys, be sure to like this video if you do go on to enjoy it. And if you're actually finding yourself new to this channel, then maybe even consider subscribing. Stay up to date with more Arrowverse content just like this. Also, I'm just throwing this in at the beginning of this video because I really don't want you guys to miss out on this. So if you haven't seen my 10k subscriber video special or whatever, I'm giving away 2 prizes. One is this Joker picture, and then one is a pop vinyl of your choice. If you haven't already and you've been subscribed to me for a little while or for a long time, go over to that video, leave a comment, and then you'll actually have a chance of winning these prizes. So best of luck, guys. But anyway, the mid-season finale of Arrow season 6. Now, this is something I've been seeing everywhere, and it didn't influence my decision at all. But this was probably the weakest of the mid-season finales across all the shows. And I say that because it was pretty lackluster as an overall kind of episode, but that doesn't mean that the twists in it were pretty interesting, but it still left me feeling like, oh, like that wasn't like the actual dramatic if you know what I mean. I know that's weird, but there wasn't any of that. But that's being said, when the team went their own ways at the end of the episode and stuff like that, I was left feeling like, okay, at least they did something like that. The whole first 10 to 15 minutes of the episode with the Felicity post-wedding stuff, that was okay. I know a lot of people are complaining about that and saying it's garbage. I had a couple of moments in it that I really took away from it that I very much so liked. My most favorite moment in all of that was Papa Lance. I call him Papa Lance, so Captain Lance, Quentin Lance. He's not the captain anymore, but he gave Oliver this watch that his father gave to him. And just, you know, if you've been watching this show for a long time, you know those two have been through a whole lot. Like Captain Lance, once upon a time, was going after him when he was the captain, and then they grew closer, and then they grew apart, but then they've grown closer again. And the fascinating thing about this is because of their relationship, obviously. Like, you know, Oliver, in Quentin's eyes, way back at the beginning, was responsible for his daughter Sarah's death, but so much has happened since then, and Oliver doesn't have any parents anymore, and Quentin is the closest thing to that. And I love the characters like, you know, Quentin Lance on Arrow and Joe West on The Flash. So that was a very special moment, not just for those two characters, but for me as well. I don't know, I just love soppy moments like that. But this is when everything starts to go downhill, because Quentin gets a call, I believe, from Oliver's lawyer handling the case, that one of the members on the Team Arrow is ready to come forward and say that they're witness that Oliver is the Green Arrow. Now, this is where all the interesting stuff actually starts happening in the episode. Maybe they should have made the first, you know, that whole wedding stuff with... I didn't mention Donna or anything like that because I really don't care about all that. It doesn't, if anything, Donna's character and stuff like that is annoying to me a little bit. She wasn't so annoying. I suppose I'm talking about it now. But yeah, like all that stuff we can just brush aside. But this is where I feel like they should have started it a little bit earlier to captivate the audience a bit more into the mid-season finale. And I say this because this is where they told Dig, and obviously Dig is immune to the whole suspicious thing because, you know, it's a part of the power trio, Oliver, Felicity, and Dig. They're the original OG members of Team Arrow. And, you know, they discussed the whole thing about, you know, there's a spy on the team. And I thought this was pretty dramatic. I quite liked it. It was probably the only thing that had quite a bit of weight to the episode, unless you're talking about the very, very end scene, which was quite a cool tease, but I'll get to that when I get to that. But regardless, this is where all the very awkward stuff comes in, because they started putting surveillance on the members of Team Arrow. So this is Renee, Dinah, Drake, and Curtis. Even though Dig and everyone really had a problem with that, it was necessary. So I get why it's a bad kind of thing to do, but when you're in that position, especially after the betrayal of Evelyn Sharp, I thought it was quite justified, despite even later in this you know, episode of what happened with those team members at the end. Didn't feel like it was justified, and I'll talk about that when that moment comes around. But, you know, what are you going to do? If you have somebody willing to bring down everything you stand for, you know, you might go to jail and everything like that, you might not be able to see your son, then you kind of are forced to play that hand. Now, I didn't really understand the whole point of the Dinah, Drake, and Vigilante scenes, beyond the point of the fact that it stirred up and a bit of trouble and suspicion with her character later. But, you know, there was a whole lot of that, you know, whether it's at the beginning of the episode with her receiving a text from Vigilante and stuff like that. And it was just, I don't know, it's just like, oh, you know, I can't stop thinking about you kind of thing, or don't contact me again kind of thing, and it's like, oh, we're still going to meet again kind of thing. So it's just all that, and I was like, really? But to be fair, I guess including this scene did actually make me think, oh, what if Dinah is the one, you know, testifying against Oliver Queen? And I know that was a very obvious trap to fall in, but I did actually think of Renee as well, because I thought, okay, he has his daughter to think about, and that made logical sense. And I thought about this before the episode, but I still didn't know for sure. So when they included that Dinah Drake stuff, I thought, well, maybe she actually does want to run away with her partner, but at the same time, I don't know, there wasn't really a reason why she would out Oliver Queen as the Green Arrow. So I don't know about that, but yeah, I guess, you know, there's a bit of character development there between, you know, Vigilante and Dinah Drake, even though I feel like Vigilante is a bit of a character that nobody cares about now because of that disappointing reveal. And I say disappointing in the sense of, like, some people might not find it disappointing. I'm not even totally entirely on that board, but, you know, everyone wanted it to be someone else rather than the partner that we thought was dead. And even though it is kind of interesting it's him, nobody really cares. But this is where Team Arrow got pretty convinced that it was Dinah, because as they had surveillance, which we were talking about a second ago, on each of the team's members, obviously they saw Dinah talking to Vigilante, and they were like, oh god, what is going on here? So I understand the suspicions now. I totally would be the exact same out of Curtis, Renee, and everyone else. I would be exactly what, like, Oliver was being in this episode, but I want to get to that discussion a little bit later, because I want to justify who should be angry at who, because it was kind of all against Oliver in this episode towards the end. But anyway, I think one of the highlights of this episode for me was the Captain Lance and Black Siren moment. So I want to just talk about the beginning bit. When Captain Lance was taking Thea back to her apartment, guess who was there? Black Siren. She took Quentin away for Caden James, which we'll get to in a second as well. And she wanted to leave, obviously, a phone in Thea's hand when she was knocked out. So they had a point of contact, because in this episode, Caden James wanted this amplifier that could do something very, very bad. But they had to infiltrate Argus to, you know, get this amplifier. And that was an interesting story within itself, because Dig had to pretend to get into his own office. I'm sure he could have just talked to Lila about it, but at the same time, Lila's relationship with Diggle and doing things for their own kind of things, like she has Argus, he has Team Arrow, they're always arguing about the ethical line, so I guess they just didn't want to get into all of that, so he went behind his wife's back. But regardless, I thought this Argus infiltration was quite interesting and entertaining, because we got a Mission Impossible moment from Oliver stealing the amplifier. I'm just going to call it that because I can't remember anything else about that crazy ass tool that Caden James wanted. But when he was coming down on the wire, that was fun. But this is where the drama went down in the episode, because when, you know, it was mission success, they headed back to the Arrow Cave. Dinah walks in the Arrow Cave, and, you know, she's just like, so what did you all just get back from the field? Because I felt, you know, it was like a bit of dramatic music there with the violin, because she walks in, everyone's there, just, you know, post-op, and you couldn't probably feel any less, you know, not included. So I did kind of feel bad for her, especially when Oliver got very brooding and, you know, very confrontational and basically shouted. I remember that very specifically, somebody on this team, and, you know, she looked very hurt, and I don't necessarily blame her, but she ended up saying, screw you guys. Now, this is the interesting part in this episode, because it's like, who do you kind of blame as the audience member? Do you think Oliver was justified in kind of being that suspicious of Dinah? And do you think Dinah was right to just be like, screw you? Or do you think she should have been kind of more understanding as to how that looked a bit suspicious? This is where I'm getting a bit confused. In my personal opinion, I feel like they did kind of play it right, despite what kind of happened later with the team abandoning Oliver. Because, you know, if this has happened to you before, aka Evelyn Sharp, and it was me, I would be suspicious, especially if one of your team members are meeting with a known pain in the ass vigilante behind your back. I don't know, but I would really love to know your thoughts there. Who was in the wrong there? Because we also need to discuss that with everyone leaving the team later as well. But this is when Wild Dog, mad respect to him at the same time, and I really like Renee now, whereas I hated him at the beginning of Season 5, actually admitted to it, and, you know, it was kind of logical and predictable in this sense that he did it because, you know, he saw the evidence that they had on Oliver, and he seriously thought that he was going down, and there's literally no way out of that. So he was, you know, as Team Arrow said as well, and I kind of do understand this, and this is why I'm not properly mad at Wild Dog. because he was in an impossible decision. He thought he was going down. So what would you do? You would make the only decision you could, like to be with your daughter and not have her taken away, and not go down with the sinking ship. And that's something I really liked about this episode from Oliver as well. Like, apart from the immediate dismissal, like saying "get out," which was, you know, quite a cool dramatic moment, he actually admitted himself that, why am I basically mad at someone for doing something that I only would have done if I was in his exact same position? So we got Renee back on the team, but that is when Renee actually annoyed me. Wild Dog actually annoyed me a bit, because in that mission when they were going after Captain Lance, because obviously if you remember, we talked about earlier, or if you remember in the episode, if you've seen it yourself, that Black Siren took Captain Lance, and, you know, we needed to get their amplifier to Caden James. This is where Wild Dog kind of went rogue and didn't, you know, follow chain of command, and that is what really pissed Oliver off. And to be honest, I'm kind of totally on Oliver's side, because look, Wild Dog got a second chance. And the one thing he said, I'm not going to wait around for Oliver to trust us again or something. So he went to go find Lance, even though he had the good intentions. If that was me and I was back in the team again, I would not do anything wrong, like, or even begin to break the chain of command for a long time, especially after being the one to, even though it was technically his own right decision, to grass up Oliver and potentially get him in jail. But I do want to kind of take a step back from this before we get onto that ending part of the episode. I want to talk about the Black Siren story with Captain Lance real quick. I feel like this was them, the Arrow show writers or producers, whoever's in control of all these creative decisions, you know, showing that there is actually still hope for Black Siren yet, because her eyes were completely glassing up. You know, she was about to cry when she was remembering her father, you know, her Quentin Lance on her Earth when he died. And it was actually, we got a bit of backstory here. It was on her 13th birthday. Every year he went out to get a cake for her. And it ended up, I think, through, you know, our Quentin saying that he also did that for Laurel. I think it was the same cake. But either way, he died in a drunk driver accident, which is horrible. And, you know, it could have been so... It sounds like the two Laurels were almost identical up until probably Earth 2's Black Siren Laurel's 13th birthday. But either way, I thought this was actually a very crucial moment in this whole entire season, because we got to see it as a human side to Laurel. And not only that, when this whole stuff was going down with Caden James this episode, you know, Laurel said run to Quentin. She let him go. So that is something very important we need to put under our belt buckle for now and revisit another time, because this means that, you know, we might see, even despite the ending of, you know, with all the villains, you know, standing there is a human, very human side to her. There is something we can appeal to, or the team can appeal to. We're not a part of the team or the part of the show someday. And I really like that. And it made me feel a bit more connected to Black Siren. Also, quickly, I freaking loved that bow trick when Oliver was surrounded. I was like, seriously, how is he going to get out of this one? And then the bow activated to, like, throw out a lot of these kind of popping flashbang flares or whatever. That was brilliant. I love seeing more vigilante stuff like that. But anyway, the last thing I want to talk about is that moment when Renee left. As I mentioned earlier, we've briefly already discussed this. I don't blame Oliver for doing that. I probably would have said that and then given Renee another, you know, a third chance a few weeks, maybe a couple of months down the road. So I don't blame him for saying that. But at the same time, with everyone leaving, with Dinah after that, she kind of had a little bit of a motive because she got the blame initially. But then Curtis, I don't know, I feel like Oliver was justified in his suspicions with Dinah. So we're left with the power trio at the end of this episode. Literally just Dig, literally just Oliver and Felicity. So the team don't particularly believe in Oliver anymore, and we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens there. But how about that team up at the end there? I really thought that was fantastic. Even though we haven't seen hardly anything of Richard Dragon this whole half of the season really so far. We did get to see a glimpse of him again. We saw Vigilante was a part of it. We saw Black Siren was a part of it. We got an answer to how they knew it was all sabotage, because Black Siren bugged the Arrow Cave. And now they said that she did that a couple of months ago. How? I mean, was there time for that? I don't know, but I guess there was. And also Anatoly coming in. I kind of don't like him being this evil, and I kind of don't want him to be, but this is actually quite a cool thing. You know, if you think about all these people stood there, and you're just thinking, oh my god, Team Arrow is pretty screwed. So I have to commend the episode for that reason as well. That was quite a cool lineup, quite a cool reveal. Gets us thinking about the second half of the season. I like the Black Siren and Quentin moments most of all, I would say. I struggle with it a bit with the whole team dynamic and their justifications for leaving. I don't know if that was quite realistic. That the team, I feel, is made of stronger stuff than that, and then just to write them off saying, you know, oh, my trust was invaded and stuff like that. But it is what it is, and I thought this episode was okay, but I would say Arrow has been pretty weak so far, and it was the weakest mid-season finale. But that doesn't mean it wasn't good. I would give it like a 7, a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. You know, it was no way near 10, which is, you know, in my books and how it is in most people's books, flawless. But it was above average, which is 5, obviously. So let me know what you thought of this episode in the comment section down below, guys. And let's theorize and get some predictions going for the second half of Arrow Season 6. But if you guys enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button, as it really just does show your support for the channel, and it takes 2 seconds of your time. And if you're new to this channel and you enjoyed this video, then maybe even consider subscribing to stay up to date with all Arrowverse content just like this. I've also got a Patreon now, guys, so if you want to support the channel with the extra mile and help fuel the content that I create on this channel as well, maybe consider clicking on that link and checking out the tiers and see if you want to support this channel a little bit more. And thank you to all my current existing patrons as well. I really appreciate your support so much. It really does mean the world to me. But apart from that, guys, thank you so much for watching this Arrow video. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.